Hey guys, it's Courtney with the Kitchen Garden here for another episode of helping you to have a backyard garden that is manageable, that you can grow in a small space and make the most of. So today we're going to talk about what do you grow in your garden in the wintertime. It doesn't have to be a stop to your gardening, though it can be if you want to break, but what things can you grow in the winter? Let's get started. So the great thing about winter gardening is that anybody can do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can grow a field full of vegetables if you live in a colder climate that is usually several feet under snow in the wintertime. But there are things that people can grow no matter what zone you live in. If you're not sure what a zone is, it's the USDA hardiness zone, and usually is designated by a map, and I'll put a link here for you to check it out yourself and see what zone you live in, because that's pretty important. If you live in one of the colder zones up north, like a zone 2, 3, 4, then chances are you might need to use a help such as a cold frame or a greenhouse or a tunnel, a polytunnel, something like that, in order to grow all winter long, just to protect your crops from the harsh temperatures. But if you live in a more southerly zone, we live in 8B here, which means we just don't really get a lot of snow. Maybe in February, a snap snow here and there. I'm usually doing okay to just keep my plants covered if it's going to be bitterly cold. But you'll just have to check and see what zone you live in and what grows best there and what you might need to do in order to grow all winter long. It could be that you rely more on container gardening and you can bring them into a covered space if you're going to have a blizzard or something like that. But for the most part, you can grow no matter where you live. So that being said, what are some of my favorite things to grow in the winter? What can you grow in the winter? There are still so many options. I think a lot of us consider greens to be really the only choice, but that's not actually true. So there's a lot that we can grow. So let's talk about each one. One of my favorite things to grow, usually late fall and into the winter, is broccoli. So here you can see I'm getting a first head forming on this broccoli plant. Broccoli is really hardy. It doesn't mind some cold temps and even some frost. We've had at least 3 or 4 nights where it's gotten below freezing, and the broccoli has done well. So you want to feed it well, because obviously it's a pretty large plant. And if you want more than one broccoli plant, which you definitely do, then you just want to make sure that you're feeding them well. So broccoli is definitely on the list. Next is cabbage, and you can see that this cabbage is starting to form a head here in the middle, tightening up. Let's come over here. See the classic kind of cabbage formation that you'll see there. Cabbage is excellent to grow in the cooler temperatures. It takes a while for it to form those beautiful cabbage heads that you're used to seeing. And there's all kinds of different varieties though that you can grow, including, red cabbage and pointy cabbage and all kinds of Asian cabbages like pak choi and things like that. So consider cabbage one of the great things to grow in the wintertime. Okay, kale is up next, and it's a classic, and you can see we've been eating ours. I came out here a few nights ago and then trimmed most of it off for a soup that we were going to have, but you can see that it's already producing some nice young leaves. And so kale we keep in our garden almost year round, but we plant in the fall, keep it growing all winter, and take it honestly on into the summer until it really can't take the heat anymore. But kale does a great job of growing in the winter garden. I have several kale plants over here because we eat a lot of kale. See it over there next to the cabbage. And we did have a bit of a battle with some cabbage worms earlier, but since we've gotten some frosts, it's kind of nipped them. So kale's also on the list. Next we have some cauliflower, and they look a lot like cabbages. All of the broccoli and cauliflower and kale and cabbage are all really in the same brassicas family. Look to see if we had I don't think we have a head forming yet. maybe not quite, but hopefully soon, because these plants are getting really large. And you can see I had a cabbage worm over here. We're gonna do a video about that a little later on, some ways that you can keep the cabbage worms away, or at least maintain them. Got another nice broccoli head forming over there. And you can see over here, these are dead zinnias, and I've got to collect their seeds. So cauliflower takes a while to grow. If you eat cauliflower weekly, you want to plant a lot, because it takes a lot to grow a cauliflower and get it to a full head. But cauliflower is definitely something to keep in mind for the winter garden. Okay, next is collards, something that I love to eat in the winter time. And these are just beautiful. And they're great just cooked with a little bacon and garlic, and then we splash them with some balsamic vinegar. But collards always make the list. They're also a really good cover crop if you want to plant them pretty intensively and just harvest what you want and leave the rest to kind of cover the soil, and then turn back in come the spring. Okay, Brussels sprouts is something else that we try to grow every year. They are a long game. You can see the little sprouts forming there, and I'll need to come and start taking off some of these lower leaves here and giving those little sprouts there a chance to grow. So Brussels sprouts have to start earlier in the fall, just to give them enough time to grow before they stop growing. So just something to think about. That's something that's been nibbling that one. There we go. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Swiss chard is a favorite, and these are looking these are a little small. I think they fought for a long time for some light next to these marigolds, but now the marigolds are ready to have seeds collected and come out, so I'll try to do that this weekend. It's always something. It's always something to do. And these collards are kind of crowding in on them too, but I'm going to fertilize them this weekend and get these growing. These are bright lights chard, and they'll get pretty large, and we love to eat them as well all winter long and into the spring and even the summer if the heat's not too bad. So Swiss chard is always a winner. All right, so you can see some of the seedlings I have coming up here, and these are carrot seeds. I need to thin some of them out. I had planted them. I had taken out my sweet potatoes here and planted carrot seeds just right on top, and then put some burlap over them to help the germination rate. There's another and another and another. Not as thick as I would have liked, but not terrible either. So I went ahead and planted the carrots because I knew that they needed some warm weather to germinate, but then they can really grow all winter and get nice and sweet. So I love to check back with these on video in a bit, in a couple months, and just kind of see how they're looking. So not too bad. We're trying the burlap experiment. Definitely some of the seeds didn't germinate fully, but that's okay. That's what we're doing, is experimenting. So let's talk about what other kind of seeds you can plant in the winter as well. Okay, so those are all the plants that I already have in the ground. Most of them came from seedlings that I had purchased at the store, except for the carrots. Everything else I did buy as plants already, and that's because I didn't have as much space in the garden then, and nor did I have the time to start things from seed. The fall is just unbelievably busy here, homeschooling kids and trying to keep this business running with the blog. It's just a lot of work, and all the activities that our kids are involved in, so starting seeds was not going to happen. But now that I've taken up a lot of the summer harvest, that died in our second frost. Actually, a lot of it didn't get bit in the first, but it did get bit in the second. We had a lot of hot peppers still growing and a lot of herbs and flowers still growing. And now that they have expired, now I have some free space in my beds. And so what can I plant there? What are some winter seeds that I can still start? And a few things that I love. Arugula. This is rocket lettuce. It's delicious. It's got a nice peppery bite. So I'm going to plant some arugula today in some of that free area. Same with some romaine. This is the Paris Island, and it's from Baker Creek, one of my faves. So definitely lettuces of any kind are perfect to grow in the winter. They love the cool temps. They're also really easy to put in planters and have kind of close to the house so they don't get bit if you're in one of those colder zones. I'm going to plant some more collards, and these are going to be more of a cover crop out in our row garden, and I'll harvest as needed. And then finally, these are purple top turnips, an heirloom variety. We love turnips. You can eat both the root and the leaf, the green on top, usually together, cooked with a hammock. So, purple top turnips are also a winter favorite. You can also consider things like radishes that have a really short growing season, especially if you want instant gratification, for the most part, about as instant as you'll get when you're growing something from seed. And there are also a few herbs that can survive the winter. There's obviously perennial herbs that come back year after year, like your rosemary, or it's just hardy. But also things with a bit more of a tender stem, like parsley, can survive some really cold temperatures. So don't forget about those when you're planning your winter garden as well, or when you're considering what to grow. I hope you found this helpful. I'm so glad you guys stopped by. Hit subscribe so that when I post a new video, you'll get a notification for it. And just thanks again for supporting this channel and being interested in gardening. I do think it's making a huge comeback, and as it should, using our backyard spaces to grow food for our families and others. It's just a really empowering endeavor. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and let me know if you have any questions below. Thanks, guys.